there has been close to 50 years of research in the neurosciences that has shown beyond the shadow of a doubt that challenging kids do not lack motivation to behave well. What do they lack? They don't lack the will, they lack the skills. All of the research in the neurosciences has shown that these kids, in essence, have what you might think of as a learning disability of sorts. They have a developmental delay. They are delayed in the development of some crucial thinking skills. Except instead of reading, math, and writing, like the learning disabilities we recognize these days, this is a learning disability in different areas. What are the areas? Problem solving, flexibility, frustration tolerance. These are kids who lack crucial thinking skills in those areas. Now, as soon as you start thinking about this as a learning disability, a lack of skill, not will, it's a complete and total game changer. Which is why we're going to see that the rest of this morning focused on assessment and the rest of this afternoon focused on intervention is going to be very, very different from what folks are usually accustomed to doing. It changes the game entirely. Now, how do we know, by the way, even the research aside, how do you know that this is a developmental delay? Well, think of it this way. What do we call it when 2-year-olds are extremely challenging? We call it the what?
Terrible twos.
Terrible twos. And do we call it the terrible twos because 2-year-olds are deviant, pathological little creatures, much as we might feel that way at times? No. Why do we call it the terrible twos? Because 2-year-olds stink at tolerating frustration, being flexible, and problem solving. And yet nobody gets too concerned about a 2-year-old who's melting down a fair amount, because what do we say? They're 2. 2-year-olds aren't supposed to have those skills yet. But by the time you get to be 4, you should have better skills than a 2-year-old when it comes to problem solving, flexibility, and frustration tolerance. And 6, and 8, and 10, and 12, and 14, you should be developing those skills. And the interesting thing is, most kids do, thankfully. Some kids do not. Some kids are 5 and look like they're 2. Some kids are 8 and look like they're 4. Some kids are 14, look like they're 6. 18, look like they're 9. You name it. And what is this? It's just a gap in development. It's a developmental delay. And I have to say, when the kid is 5 and looks like they're 2, we have an easier time staying true to that idea. But when the kid is 16 and looks like they're 6, we tend to all of a sudden believe that this is just willful behavior on their part. Now, all the research has shown that this is a lack of skill, not will. And we're going to go into detail about what that research has shown. I have to say, though, that the analogy of a learning disability here is a very powerful and apt one. Why is it powerful and apt? Well, I don't think we actually have to go back too far in time to a point at which, say, a 5th grader was in a classroom around here and reading at a 1st or 2nd grade level. And what would educators most likely have assumed about that child, say, 40 years ago?
Retarded.
What's that?
Retarded.
Yeah, he was dumb, or one other predominant explanation.
Stubborn.
Stubborn, and an offshoot of that,
Okay.
lazy. Those are the 2 predominant ones. He was dumb or he was lazy, and those explanations guided people's intervention. If he was dumb, you know what, put your efforts elsewhere because he's not going to get it. And if he was lazy, what were we going to do? Try to motivate him to read. Now, what have we learned the hard way? How misguided that was. And in fact, who was trying harder than anybody in the class to read? The kid to whom it didn't come naturally. I mean, think about it. You've all seen, I've seen this with my own kids, a kid who learns to read easily, they're not trying very hard. It just comes to them. Who's trying really hard? The kid to whom it doesn't come naturally. The very same is true about challenging kids. Who's trying really hard to behave well? The kids to whom it doesn't come naturally. Who's not trying very hard? The kids to whom this is easy. The well-behaved kids, ironically. Now, not only were kids with recognized learning disabilities like dyslexia not long ago completely misunderstood and mistreated, but now we understand them. Not only is that analogy apt, but when you think about how you intervene with a learning disability, in a nutshell, that's all you really need to be doing when it comes to challenging behavior. Treating challenging behavior like it was a learning disability. What does that mean? Figure out what skills the kid lacks related to problem solving, flexibility, and frustration tolerance. Use a different approach to teach those skills in increments the kid can handle.